The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
The 1420 Sports Bar Podcast, show number 353. 4 beers worth of sports talk and a whole lot more. Tonight's show is brought to you by SeatGeek.com, the SeatGeek app. Use promo code 1420pod at SeatGeek.com today. Remember, we are part of the Belly Up Media Network. Go to BellyUpSports.com for all the great articles and other podcasts we got there. And actually go over to Belly Up and Friends over on Spotify. All the shows are right there. They're doing quite well there. A lot of downloads happening for all the Belly Up shows. And thank you for everybody who's been listening to our show or watching the show over on YouTube. And thanks once again to Garrett from Two Dudes from Sports News for joining us last Thursday night, I guess it was, for the great show. We had a lot of fun going on there. Dave, this Christmas time is here. I was driving by your place the other day. I was Sunday, yesterday. I drove by. I saw you had the Christmas decorations up there on the corner of the 13th Avenue. There, it was nice to see. You're in the festive spirit.
Oh, we got right festive on Sunday. The tree is up. It's all decorated. The boy and I got our lights and garland up in the front. It's looking quite festive, and it was nice to take care of some shit with the weather that we've been gifted here so far in December. And way we went, I even treated myself to a nice old eggnog, first one of the year. So
I've never been an eggnog guy. Like, I remember, when I lived in BC years and years ago, I had an eggnog drink with some spiced rum, and I don't want to say violently ill, but I wasn't good. Like, I was something didn't work. And I've never been an eggnog guy.
Oh, give me that egg.
I'm gonna try it this year. I don't know what it was. Maybe it's something. You know what? Never blame the booze. It must have been something I ate. Had to have been.
Probably, because it's not the booze's fault. That's a natural cure-all, right? No, eggnog with the Kraken spiced rum and a little shaved fresh nutmeg on top is how I make mine. Oh, it's mother's milk.
I put, for some reason, I had to go out and about for, like, I don't get outside during the week very much, which is odd, but it's one of those things. And I got kind of laughing this morning when I was getting dressed, and I put my socks on for some reason before I put my pants on. And I normally don't do that. And I put a poll up on Twitter, and it's like 52-48%. Are you a pants prior to socks or socks prior to pants guy?
I voted. I'm a socks guy. Like, when I shower, our bathroom is right across from our bedroom. I bring into the shower with me my gaunch, my socks, and a t-shirt.
Really?
Yeah. And then so before I even leave the bathroom, I got those three are on, and then I deal with everything else.
Because I always find, like, I wanted to hold off on socks till the very bitter end. Like, socks might be the last thing I put on. Like, like, I might put my jacket on before I put my fucking socks on. I hate it. I hate socks and shoes and everything else. But it's just one of those things.
Well, we got hardwood all throughout the house, and if you're walking around in bare feet, they can get a little cool. And we don't keep the house at whatever 28 like you and the producer do over there.
Oh, she don't mind being toasty here. There's no getting around that. She's fucking the darkest depths of Bermuda and everything else here at the 1420 World Headquarters. One of those things. Dave, the great weekend in sports. Lots was going on. There was definitely some controversy that got released yesterday. We usually start the Monday show off with the NFL, but I this one's kind of like the college football is more near and dear to my heart, and I just because I just like it more. It's one of those things. So I thought we'd start with that a little differently tonight, because it was huge controversy yesterday throughout the Twitter land and college football and everywhere else. But they released their Final Four. The committee said that Washington, Michigan, Alabama and Texas are getting in, and Georgia and Florida State were out. When you saw that, what were your initial thoughts? Like, I know you follow it to an extent, but what were your initial thoughts you saw this? Because we've been following, like, the two of us have been following it a lot more in depth in the last few weeks. What were your initial thoughts when you saw that Final Four come across at noon Mountain Standard Time yesterday?
I was shocked that they kept Florida State out. That's the one thing that shocked me. And it also got me to thinking, right? If Oregon would have won that game for the Pac-12, then both Washington and Oregon would be out, and they would have put Georgia in, or Florida State, like something. Yeah,
no, they would have put Georgia in.
I think so too. Like, I was not giddy. I was really hopeful. I like, oh fuck, really? We might have a top 4 without an SEC school, and I couldn't wait for the heat that was going to be coming from those Southern boys bitching and moaning about best, toughest football in the land and not having a team in the top 4. That's the headlines I was hoping for, and I was surprised that they gave the nod to Texas and Bama and not. I thought Florida State would have replaced either Bama or Texas. That's what I thought.
I thought Texas was in because Texas handled Oklahoma State. I think it was on the in the Big 10 or Big 12, whatever the fuck it's called. I can't remember. There's so many different conferences and different incarnations of things going on. But the way that they won their game on Saturday, Texas was in. But I thought that Alabama played their way out of it with their performance against Auburn, and then the loss to Texas early in the season, obviously, and they had a couple other games that weren't. I don't want to say they were underwhelming, but they weren't very whelming throughout the season. Nobody's. I don't think anybody's that scared of Alabama anymore, except for Michigan right now. But that's another story for another day. We'll talk about that in a couple of weeks. But I was shocked. I was shocked that a Power 5 conference that didn't lose a game was out. A team that beat some SEC teams with Florida. They beat LSU. Yes, they some down years. They beat Clemson, but they beat everybody who's in front of them. And that's all you can do. And that's the bad thing about college football. You can only play who's in front of you and beat who's in front of you. Do you need to run a score up every week? Apparently you do. Apparently you have to do it week in, week out to have that happen, because you have to put up the stats and everything else, to the metrics for the committee to say something. I was so shocked. And then I got thinking a lot about it. I was so shocked when Alabama got in and Florida State was out. I for one could not believe it. I couldn't believe it.
It kind of, I was looking for analogies and trying to think. It's like, back in the 70s, they would have these key parties and doing some swapping, So everybody throw their key into the bin. We're going to pull a couple out. Some people are going to go home happy. Some people aren't, but definitely someone's going to get fucked. And you know what? Those are your Seminoles. They got fucked and they're going home.
Like realistically, like you didn't have to, like realistically, because I think there's a bit of an East Coast bias. The Pac-12 has been down for a number of years, and you kind of hack on them a little bit. I'm a Pac-12 guy, and you're a Big 10 guy, and you hack on them a little bit. But it's funny. It could have been very easily could have been Washington on the outside looking in, and not Florida State. Like very easily, because there is such a need, because it's money, and let's not pretend it's not. There's money involved with the networks, everything else, to have an SEC team and a Big 10 team in, no matter what. Because you're a huge Michigan guy. Michigan's strength of schedule is pretty bad. But because they won the Big 10, which is like the second biggest conference in the land, they were in no matter what. Like it wasn't even a discussion if they were in. Michigan's strength of schedule isn't that good. If you look at some teams that are played, it's pretty underwhelming.
You know what? I was prepared for that question, and you're right. Like top to bottom, their schedule isn't that good every week. But they beat two. They're the only team in the top 4 to beat 2 top 10 teams this year. Penn State and Ohio State. As it sits right now, both Ohio State and Penn State are ranked in the top 10. No other team in the top 4, no other team in the top 10 beat 2 other teams that are in the top 10. And then they handled a Buckeye team this weekend that, they're ranked 14, I think, but with a monster defense, and they beat them. They shut them out.
Iowa
right?
can't put up points. Iowa's the Hawkeyes. They're terrible.
And I get it, you're right. And
They're
I'm not. I'm pumping their tires a little bit to bolster Michigan's case.
Yeah.
But both Penn State and Ohio State are top 10 teams as it sits right now. No one else beat 2 top 10 teams.
But you said a couple weeks back when Aaron, the guys from Brutally Honest, were on the show with us that Penn State's not a very good football team. They're in the Big Ten and they get points. They're going to be ranked. They'll be ranked 9th next year. Right now. Like right now, if you put out the college football rankings for 2024 season, Penn State's ranked 9 right now, and they're not good. They're not. The Big Ten's overrated. So what I'm getting at, Dave, here, now you can probably you're going to disagree 100%. There were 3 teams that very easily could have been number 1. Very easily. Michigan got it because they're a Big Ten team. And if you have a loss, I don't think you can be number 1. And Alabama, yeah, whatever. But you had Washington, you have Florida State, and you had Michigan. I would put
Liberty.
And Liberty, but yeah.
We joke.
But you have those 3 teams probably aren't as good as Georgia. Those 3 teams definitely, one could have been out no matter what. Michigan got in because of money, because they were never once thought to be out. Never once. And they didn't play anybody of substance. Nobody.
That's fucking bullshit. Like Texas in the Big 12, that's fucking garbage. Like, they lost to Oklahoma, who lost to fucking Kansas. And that's not because Kansas is a great team. Kansas had an okay year. Like, so let's not besmirch like Florida State and Texas. Their conference schedule is just as shitty as any Big Ten schedule, and you're not going to tell me different.
No, I know.
Right. So let's not shit on Michigan. The Pac-12, they had ranked teams all the way through, and I couldn't.
The Pac-12 is actually one of the stronger one of the stronger years they've ever had this year, in my opinion.
Yeah, but we'll find out, right? Like like Arizona, I think they're 15 or 16. Oregon State, but when you play each other, you're going to get some wins here and there, right? And that's the same in the Big Ten. But in as far as top 10, it's Washington and Oregon and nobody else, right? And they had to beat the same team twice. I find that if you're going to have a conference champion, you shouldn't have to play a team you played in the regular season, unless it's a crossover thing. But every team plays each other anyways, so I don't understand. It's just a money grab, and not much I get.
My problem with Alabama getting in is that they had to get an SEC team in, and I now it'll never happen because now they're getting into a 12 team playoff next year.
Yeah.
My problem with Alabama getting in, we talked about it last week. They should not have won that game last week. The Keystone Cops came in. They should not have won that game against Auburn. So that's a
thing I thought about too, because
they should not have won that game.
It seemed like the fix
and
was
Auburn was a 6-5 fucking team, a 6-5 team. Alabama's not that good. But you know what?
Handed that game.
Alabama was great against Georgia yesterday. They had some tough games. I can't remember who they played that weren't great wins. They had some underwhelming wins this season that they won by 5 or 6 points. They thought they're going to blow guys out. They lost to Texas. Alabama could, and yes, they weren't. Yes, they weren't. They weren't a 3-loss team. But Alabama, to me, was if this makes any sense, they were a 2.5-loss team this season. And for them to get into the playoff, I think it's a fucking and you don't want to use the word travesty, but it's a fucking travesty, man. Like if the committee says we need to have a Big Ten team, we need to have an SEC team, and then the other 2 spots, we'll figure it out. Say that ahead of time, because that's what it looked like to me. That's what because the Big Ten's weak, and you admit it. It's weak. There's 2 teams. That's it.
3 teams.
Penn State's not very good.
Well, they're top 10, right? And I don't make the rankings, right? Like I get it. SEC is traditionally stronger, but LSU had a down year. Auburn had a down year. Who else is Tennessee had a down year? Like they're okay. Georgia was fucking good, and I'm actually a little bit surprised that Georgia lost that game, but it was a good game and I enjoyed watching it. The team I didn't like won, and you know. And then you think about that again, so if the fix wasn't in against Auburn and Alabama loses that game, but still beats Georgia in the SEC championship game, can you put a 2-loss Alabama?
Exactly.
But now, they're the SEC champ. You can't
if some fucking punt returner, I can't remember his name, who I'll never hear from again. We'll never hear from him again. For Auburn, doesn't drop that ball. Alabama's a 2-loss team.
Yeah.
They
don't give them a day to throw the ball on that final drive, right? On that final touchdown. Thing. Yeah, it was too much a head scratcher, and it.
The fix was in.
The fix was in. The fix was in because and that's the thing. Like we can't have Bama lose because if they beat Georgia, they're not weak. They can't justify putting a 2-loss team in there, and then they can't justify putting Georgia in there because.
They lost
because Bama would have been the SEC champ, right? Yeah. You can't put a non-champion team in there,
but apparently you can if it's the ACC.
Well, and the ACC
13-0 team,
yeah, who plays nobody, right? Like the ACC is
they beat two SEC teams this year.
Yeah, who was down? Like who they beat? LSU and someone else, and Florida. Yeah. Big whoa,
but
right?
If the SEC is so great, you can only play what's in front of you.
Yeah, no, and I agree. And Florida State's the one that got jobbed. The one thing I will say, even though I don't agree with it, I do understand the decision. I was listening to a podcast today, where the committee that selects these 4 teams, they have criteria. And one of the criteria is competitive games going forward. And with Florida State being on their 3rd string quarterback, I get that as an excuse. It still fucking sucks for them. And I'm not a State fan and I don't like the ACC. Like I've never liked the teams from Florida. And then so I don't feel that bad. I kind of feel bad for them, but I don't care enough to be outraged right now because that was not a good game.
But why? Okay, why play the fucking game? Why play the game? It took us. We're 18 minutes in for someone to actually score. That's a new record for the 1420 podcast, and it was me this time instead.
Well, no, I said someone's getting fucked, but go ahead.
So the thing is that they got screwed. And if somebody gets shot, dies, whatever, breaks their ankle, that isn't the rest of the guy's fault. They still won every fucking game. And college football, that's one thing with college football is that yes, there are weaker players, 100%. But if you keep winning with your 2nd string or 3rd string, you must be pretty fucking good. No?
Oh yeah.
I saw the same thing you did. I know it was the same show or the same podcast, whatever it was that you're listening to. But yes, I understand if your best guy is out, your best quarterback is out, that you're not as good of a team. But if you're still winning, who cares? Because if that guy was to die, then you're just done. That's it. We can't move on.
Well,
there's no way we can go on and get a. Like, if it was a murder instead of a blown knee or whatever it was, that's it. We're screwed.
Well, even if it was professional football, San Fran, Brock Purdy was the 3rd starting quarterback last year, right?
100%.
Right?
So having that argument, which college football is doing, and they put all this bullshit out there, having that argument saying, well, you're not good enough because your quarterback's not good enough.
Yeah, San Fran, we can't give you the 2 seed. We're going to have to give you the 5 seed because you're down to your 5th string quarterback. No, San Fran played the games that was in front of them with the talent and the roster that was available to them, and they went out and and they kept winning games. In fact, like it sends a bad message, like NCAA student athletes, and we're noble and we can't pay these kids because they're students and they're not. No, fuck them. They went 13-0. They overcame adversity. They won with their second string quarterback, and they put them.
Say about the rest of the fucking team.
Yeah,
for the rest of the team, for the second string linebacker who made a tackle, for this guy who did this, or for the wide receiver did this. What to say about the rest of the team? Like, well, I'm still here, and we won every game.
Yeah,
it's a bullshit move. It's a bullshit move. I
completely agree. And like Louisville, sure, they made their conference championship game. I don't think they're a very no one fears Louisville, but they're a good program. If the Seminoles would have went out there and beat them by 30 with their third stringer, would they be in then?
Probably. Yeah.
Probably. And then who would be out? Bama.
Alabama. Or would they have?
Or would it have been Texas who would be outside looking in?
Texas might be out, or Washington might be out, because all of a sudden the Pac-12 they don't play anybody. Alabama was in no matter what. Whoever won that SEC championship game was in no matter what, and it's a crime. It's an actual crime.
I agree. Like whoever won that Alabama, Georgia, if they would have won, that would have been a no.
They would have won,
right? Like, right. Yeah, if Georgia would have won, yeah. But a one-loss SEC champ is they're making the top four, and I also understand.
Why don't they say that? We'll never know, because they'll never say it. Why don't they say, if you win the Big Ten, you're in. If you win the SEC, you're in, and then the other two, well, we'll figure it out.
Well, yeah, because there's four spots, and there's there's a Power 5 conference, right? So
yeah,
someone has to be on the outside looking in. And I think if the powers that be, well, like there's always going to be a Big Ten because of the history of Big Ten football. Like I think even money wise, it makes more money than SEC football.
The Big Ten network is huge. Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, because they have a far more national following wherever they go, whereas the SEC is the South, and like they're more rabid and diehard maybe, and that's where a lot of the football players come from.
And the thing is, I'm not for 1 second saying that Alabama is a worse football team than Florida State. Not for 1 second. And I'm not saying for 1 second that Georgia is a worse football team than Florida State. Not for 1 second. But what I'm saying is that you can only play who's in front of you. And if a guy gets hurt and they still keep winning, that says something. And Florida State deserves to be in there. And it's so fucking rotten that those. And I'm not an Alabama fan, but it's fun to. You always have those teams that you watch to hate. Like you hate fuck them, right? One of those things, and it's fine, but it's just not. It's not right for football. And like if there was let's just say if it wasn't Alabama or Georgia, let's say that it's all hypotheticals. If it was
Notre Dame,
unaffiliated,
yeah,
are they in? Probably not.
Oh, one loss of Notre Dame team. I bet you they would have made a play and might have even got in, because that draws numbers. No one draws eyes like Notre Dame, right? Yeah. So I don't know.
And you know what's shitty? It's not shitty. It actually is shitty. You know who's going to win? A team that shouldn't be in there? Alabama. They're going to win.
No, Michigan's going to take care of them.
They're not that good.
At the Rose Bowl.
I hope you're right.
You keep saying that, but the Michigan is that good, man. Fuck. Ohio State was ranked ahead of them. Like they weren't supposed to beat Ohio State. Like I watched a lot of football on Saturdays. Alabama and Georgia are good. That team that fucking Texas beat, they weren't as good as they were about as good as Iowa. They weren't as good as Ohio State. That Florida State Louisville game, neither of those teams are as good as Michigan and Ohio State. So you got to stop saying that, man. I watched the fucking games.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how it all turns out, but it stunk to all high hell yesterday. I came back from baseball there, and I was like, oh man, I was like, here we go.
I am surprised.
I was shocked.
Yeah, that that 2 one-loss teams got in over an undefeated Power 5 conference champion.
100%. Anyways, we'll see it all plays out New Year's Day and everything else coming ahead of time. But anyways, the 1420 Sports Bar podcast, for beer sports talk and a whole lot more. This segment was brought to you by SeatGeek.com, the SeatGeek app. Use promo code 1420pod at SeatGeek.com today and save some $20 on your first purchase over there at SeatGeek.